so that I'm neither freaked out by the depression or the manic phase. That I just take it all in stride. Now the pill doesn't do that by itself. You have to talk that through with people, or you learn to do this on your own, however that works. Or you take an intro to addictive behavior class in which I say, look, here's the working theory behind the drug. But it only goes so far. So without the pharmaceuticals, people attempt to do this using drugs, by self-medicating, by attempting to normalize. Just left somebody, oh yeah, I started out with heroin because that was my heroin-using peer group. We smoked heroin, we smoked OxyContin, but I didn't really like the down. I was just doing it because everybody else around me was doing it. And then I discovered meth, started smoking meth, and I felt great. But then I started getting drug tested for my job. I wanted to keep my job, so I went to smoking spice. Okay, so, and since this has happened now more than once, this is a typical drug pattern. I mean, you recognize it, you've heard about it, maybe you know people like this. Why don't you check out what it is that you're looking for? What are you trying to find? So part of the science that we teach when we're training drug counselors is some addiction is a purposeful behavior. It is goal-oriented. So the goal sometimes is looking for something that you don't know what it is, but you're trying to seek it in drug-taking behavior because that's what everybody else is doing. And they don't know what they're looking for either. But drug use is popular. Oh, maybe this works. And you're looking down the wrong way instead of, okay, don't use anything for 40 days. Let's try that. Look at your diet. And I mean, don't do anything psychoactive for 40 days. Okay, you've been clean for 3? Great. Let's go for a week. Let's go for a month. Now, I don't tell them until the end of 40 days that, no, actually I might tell them up front. Okay, you were using meth, so minimum clean time is 3 years. Minimum. Don't even start congratulating yourself until you've been clean for a year. Psychologically, you go through all the tests. Clean from everything for a year. You go through 420 or whatever little fake drug holidays you have. You go through Christmas. You go through summer vacation. You go through country fair. You go whatever your excuses are, right? For a year. You can't stop for a year. You can't stop for 30 days. What are you looking for? Let's get raw and real. And then we start looking at how does your diet begin to replicate your drug-taking behavior? So that balanced diet piece. If you rely on a typical American diet, it's made of high sugar, high salt, highly processed, artificially vitamined and mineralized food. We actually started looking at this a little bit last week, the rats in college sophomore piece. So, for example, if it took an acre of land per person to feed a person for a year and you don't have a garden that you supplement your groceries from, okay, maybe you can't have a garden in your apartment. Maybe you can't grow your own food, enough food to survive. Okay, but you can still look at your food intake. And that's why the whole food mood thing, connecting with, okay, I personally, as a drug counselor, I'm not going to medicate my emotional states, my anger mostly, okay, with getting stoned, or my depression with drinking. I will relapse on salt peanuts, which is bad for me. I shouldn't be eating more salt because it raises my blood pressure. Could make me stroke out. Now it's dumb. Okay, well, it's just salt peanuts, right? I'll just drink a little water. And I don't do that, of course. Right? So, All right, so at our level of complexity and interdependence is kind of self-sufficiency is difficult but can be achieved. So let's look at what feeds you. So at this website, the Weston A. Price website, Basic Nutrition and its Characteristics, starting with a definition of what that is. So Weston Price compared the dental health of traditional people with modern societies. So traditional people basically are pre-technological societies. No cavities, no skull malformations due to missing teeth or dietary-related degenerative disease. So, wow, no cavities. Of course, they didn't have dentists, but he was a professional and he looked, oh, these people have no cavities. And as soon as they started eating white sugar, white flour, canned and processed foods, they started getting cavities, facial malformations, that is, they lose their teeth and so their face starts caving in. You can see this, a lot of people who can't afford dental care, but particularly people who are into meth. And meth destroys calcium in your teeth. That's where you get meth mouth and meth face and all that other kind of stuff. So anyway, but this is strictly diet. So as soon as they started eating a Western, like even an American style diet, heavy in white sugar, white flour, canned and processed foods, they start getting cavities, those facial malformations and due to lost teeth, and other things such as long-term systemic diseases. And as soon as they returned to their traditional diet, these problems disappeared. So of course, once the traditional lands are taken over, it becomes difficult to have that traditional diet. You know, when the land that you used to use for gardening has become apartment buildings or a factory or something, or a monocrop, not feeding you. So characteristics of traditional diets. So the diets of healthy, primitive, and non-industrialized people contain no refined or denatured foods such as refined sugar, or corn syrup. In fact, virtually all corn syrup that you can get now is GMO corn syrup, which the long-term health in the body has not been established, and short-term we're starting to see some bad effects. Cancers in laboratory animals and all that kind of stuff. So white flour, canned foods, pasteurized, homogenized, skim or low-fat milk, refined or hydrogenated vegetable oil, protein powders, artificial vitamins, or toxic additives and colorings. So healthy traditional people don't have any of that stuff. All traditional cultures consume some sort of animal protein and fat from fish and other seafood, water and land fowl, land animals, eggs, milk and milk products, reptiles and insects. I'm not saying you eat snakes and bugs. You're not likely to do that. Contain at least 4 times the calcium and other minerals and 10 times the fat-soluble vitamins from animal fats, vitamins A, D, and the price factor now believed to be vitamin K12 as the average American diet. Okay, some animal products eaten raw. Primitive and traditional diets have a high food enzyme content from raw dairy products, raw meat and fish, raw honey, tropical fruits, cold-pressed oils, wine and unpasteurized beer, naturally preserved lacto-fermented vegetables, fruits, vegetables, meats, and condiments. Seeds, grains, and nuts are soaked, sprouted, fermented, or naturally leavened in order to neutralize naturally occurring anti-nutrients in these foods, such as phytic acid, enzyme inhibitors, tannins, and complex carbs. So, as an example, one of the takeaways from all this is that oftentimes people coming out of addictive behaviors, they will replicate as part of their addictive behaviors the diet that they were on when they were using. As an example. So meth, amphetamines as a class are appetite suppressants. So people don't generally feel like eating on them. And what they do eat tends to be like chocolate milk or stuff like that, high sugar. They might replace, if you go off meth, then you still might replace your diet with stimulants, caffeine, high doses of caffeine, chocolate. You're not going to eat leafy greens. You're not going to eat fresh vegetables because that's not what you ate then. So that became a normal diet for you. So when I'm talking about looking at not just your drug-taking behavior, but what you're eating as affecting your mood. Okay, because what you eat often has hidden drug substances in it, designed to replicate you doing an addictive behavior through food. So even though a healthy neurotransmitter balance has never been established, certainly we do know what constitutes a healthy diet, traditionally. So local fat content of traditional diets varies from 30 to 80%, but only about 4% of calories come from polyunsaturated oils, naturally occurring in grains, pulses, nuts, fish, animal fats, and vegetables. So the balance of fat calories is in the form of saturated and monounsaturated fatty acids, which, if you're not a dietitian, simply means, look, eat whole grains, fresh fruits and vegetables, basically like, they're talking about when they're talking about what a healthy diet is outside of this. So equal amounts of omega-6 and omega-3 essential fatty acids. You're starting to see a lot of those being advertised in foods like breads and fish oils and vitamin supplements and all that kind of stuff. So all primitive diets contain some salt, but traditional cultures might consume animal bones, usually in the form of bone broths. That is, you don't have to grind up the bones. You can actually use the bones as soup stock if you're not vegetarian. Traditional cultures make provision for the health of future generations by providing special nutrient-rich foods for parents-to-be, pregnant women, and growing children, and proper spacing of children and teaching the principles of right diets to the young. So, the guidelines, basically, eat whole natural foods. Eat only foods that will spoil, but eat them before they do. You should beware if a product has a shelf life of a year. Eat naturally raised meats, including fish, poultry, seafood, beef, lamb, game, organ meats, and eggs. Whole, naturally produced milk products from pasture-fed cows. Raw or fermented, such as whole yogurt, butter, cheese, fresh and sour cream. Now, this is assuming you don't have a health condition that could be made worse by these things. So obviously, if you're diabetic, have high cholesterol, like lactose intolerant, et cetera, et cetera. He's talking about traditional cultures that may or may not have many of the conditions, the disease conditions that we find endemic to our society and culture. Traditional fats and oils, including butter and other animal fats, extra virgin olive oil, expeller pressed sesame, and flax oil, and the tropical oils, coconut and palm oil. Fresh fruits and vegetables, preferably organic, in salads and soups, or lightly steamed. Now, what I do, for example, if I do the last one, now I find my optimal diet in terms of my sugar and feeling well-being is like salmon and salad. But I live with vegetarians. But since I'm paying the rent, mortgage, I'm cooking my salmon. Get over it. But not everybody's like that. So you have to basically take what is optimal here and adapt it for your own needs and your own pocketbook, because eating organic is expensive. Kind of no way around that. But, the expense now pays off in good health later. So using whole grains and nuts that have been prepared by soaking, sprouting, enzyme-enhanced lacto-fermented vegetables. So this is like sauerkraut, kombucha, chutneys, etc. homemade meat stocks from, so this is like soup stocks. Herb teas and coffee substitutes in moderation. Filtered water for cooking and drinking, if you can do that.
Coffee substitutes, like instead of drinking like soda?
Yeah. Right. Okay, because, you know, I know people that were basically substituting their meth habits and coke habits with multiple doses of my diet or diet Mountain Dew or Pepsi. Like, why are you drinking 64 ounces at a time? Oh, it's a big gulp. Yeah, why are you doing that? Well, I'm trying to get off coffee. Really, they're saying that. Like, okay, and Mountain Dew. Well, isn't it better for you? Well, no. Why do you think that? No, that's like marketing. That makes you think that. Why would you think that, you know, just like when we were talking about alcohol last week, you know, why do you think drinking a case is normal behavior? Who told you that? Where'd you get that idea? So what is a diet? Is a healthy diet what your parents had for dinner? I mean, is that how you learned it? Is a healthy diet, you know, I mean, I lived in my college years for 6 months on popcorn and pinto beans. That would not be an optimal diet, but it was cheap. Learned lots of different ways of making popcorn to make it interesting. But that's not an optimal diet. Okay? So making your own salad dressings, using natural sweeteners such as raw honey, maple syrup, dehydrated cane sugar, and stevia powder. This is if you don't have a problem with alcohol, use only unpasteurized wine or beer in strict moderation with meals. So strict moderation is defined the way drug counselors find moderation. 1 dose a day, 2 doses max if you are male. A day, doses. Cook in stainless steel, cast iron, glass, or good quality enamel. Avoid that Teflon stuff. Use natural supplements. Get plenty of sleep, exercise, and natural light. Think positive thoughts and minimize stress. Would you like a section on that? I haven't designed that in terms of addictive behavior other than we talked about some meditations earlier, but I haven't reinforced that. Would you like more of that later? Okay. And practice forgiveness. Ooh, in the diet section. Now, here's what he's talking about, and even though the reason I use this from this particular section is the food mood diary is about if you think of food as a drug or a mood-inducing substance, check out what you were doing before you had this craving for whatever it was. Before you had that craving for a quart of ice cream, I'm sorry, a pint of ice cream. Oh no, actually it was an ice cream cone, right? But that ice cream cone turned into first a pint of Haagen-Dazs and then a quart of what? So you're using that to medicate depression or breakup or what? So noticing what your mood is before you eat, and then looking at what you eat and then how you feel afterwards.